right, and we're live.
Welcome to Out of the Darkness. I am your host, Q. Thank you for being here. Excited. We got a great show. We have a great show. You always know it's going to be a great show when we have the Honorable Tim Miller joining us. So we thought he was upset with us after we owned him in that last.
I'm really tired. So you guys, I've been gone all day. You guys may actually have a chance to do some damage against me.
You're tired.
But
you're tired. I had turkey and gravy. Well, I guess I didn't have turkey, but I had gravy and potatoes and loads of ham and stuffing, and I can't remember what else I had today. It was other side of the family Thanksgiving. I am really tired. I don't know why I agreed to 9 o'clock. I'm dying.
Well, we did it. We did it for the Honorable Tim. When Tim asks for something, we give it to him because we respect our elders.
What did you give me?
The later time.
So you gave me the later time, but you got 1 hour to take your shots because I'm going to bed.
Wait a minute. That wasn't in the agreement. See how these politicians bait and switch?
Yep. That's what we do.
Good.
I just said, you said, can we do this at 9? And I said, yes. I'm keeping to that word.
So and I'm sorry that the rest of the show didn't get a chance to see it, but a couple of weeks ago when Tim was on the show, he kind of explained to us how he allows his heart to kind of control his legislating, and how if someone comes to him with a soft story, he'll listen and sometimes change his vote.
Nope.
And I think that's just incredibly heartwarming.
Yeah,
and
it's not what I do, but that's the way you interpret it, because I learned that you guys don't know what the word empathy means.
Oh, I know exactly what the word empathy means, but I also understand that whole idea of majority ruling. But I digress. So off air, Soder and I were talking to Tim. Unfortunately, I have come in. Well, I am dealing with some health issues that would, from what I've been told, could be greatly helped by medical marijuana or by marijuana in general. And so lo and behold, we're talking to telling my sob story to Mr. Miller in hopes that he will change his vote in the legislature to legalize marijuana here.
Is legal in Minnesota.
Oh, and first off, not in all forms. Second off, it's only legal if I don't mind losing my constitutional right of carrying a firearm.
Marijuana, if we legalize recreational use of marijuana tomorrow and you start smoking it, you still lose your ability to carry.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do, because it's a federal issue.
No, I don't.
It's a federal issue, and the feds haven't changed it.
That's fine, but I would still. So okay. So are you telling me that I don't need it? So if I get pulled over in the state of Minnesota without a carry permit issued by the state of Minnesota, that I'm going to be totes cool because of that?
Actually, currently, I think it's just a misdemeanor in Minnesota, like a simple misdemeanor. So basically, traffic.
Carrying a concealed firearm in the state of Minnesota is a traffic ticket?
It's equivalent. It's equivalent. If you don't have your permit with you, I believe it is. Yeah.
No.
If you have a permit, you're not carrying it. If you don't have a permit, then it's a different thing.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You can own a handgun without the carry permit. You just can't carry it. You can have it at home.
Carry it. You can own it. You just can't have it with you.
Well, you can have it in your home.
I said with you.
Yep.
So so when you are not at home, it must remain at home, which a lot of
guys know that I've consistently signed on to legislation that takes away the permitting requirement. You know that, right?
Oh yeah, that's great. That's
great.
Fine.
If only we could get rid of the permit for marijuana in Minnesota. Be even better.
You know, I thought about this because I thought we were going to be talking about data privacy. Maybe we'll get to that. But I thought about this. You guys are so hell-bent on legalizing different vices, and I see a pattern here, because I know you guys were, I think, serious. When you're talking about after marijuana, then you're going to legalize prostitution. And I just realized that there's these bad behaviors that you just really want legalized, and I think there's a pattern there that tells me something.
One of these days,
Well,
we'll have to do a freedom stream, and we'll have to explain to Tim that freedom is not necessarily mean that I only get the things that I want, or you only get the things that you want. Sometimes I can fight for someone's right to have or own or partake of things, or not even so much fight for their right to partake of them, but I can fight for people's right to not be to remove the government from their business. I think that's more of the issue. I agree with you on the sense. I would never partake in prostitution in the traditional sense. I think every
Is it non-traditional prostitution?
Oh, sure.
Yes, it's also called marriage or dating with benefits.
It's called dating. It's called
Wow.
So wait, no. You tell me.
Are your wives
the difference?
listening?
I'm sure
I make that joke to my wife all the time.
You tell me. I pick up a girl. I take her out to an expensive restaurant. We've already made some understanding of what's going to happen after dinner, and we go out to dinner and we come back, and I have expectations based on the previous conversations and text and things that we had before. How is that any different?
You sound like a 19-year-old college student.
Well, you know what, and perhaps I do. But God
what's the
bless
difference
the
between
students.
paying with dinner or paying with cash?
I mean, honestly,
that's a bumper sticker. What's the difference, paying with dinner or paying with cash?
Would you like to answer
what's
it?
the difference?
I mean, really?
Oh, this is great. I missed this.
No. We asked the question so that you could answer it.
What was the question?
What is the difference if you're
What's
paying
the difference between
with dinner or you're paying with
I'm not
cash?
into that. That's like
What's the difference?
That's like.
Now, quick question: if you say if it's different between dinner and cash, then for war-torn areas where women sell themselves for scraps of food, it's not prostitution because it's for food, right?
Okay, so let's try and steer away from I can't get out of my head. What's the difference if you pay for dinner or pay with cash?
Cash credit or dinner?
Let's get on the issue of prostitution. I'll even go the route of the libertarian where if you're not, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, it's okay. Okay? Do you guys have any understanding at all about the prostitution industry? You can't tell me that you're not hurting other people in the prostitution industry. If you're saying that, then you don't understand what goes on there.
Well, I
even going, I don't agree with legalizing prostitution for all of my moral reasons, but even if you go the libertarian route where it's the perfect model of if it's not hurting you, then it's not hurting anyone.
Right,
I can give you a long list,
and that's not exactly what we
of
said.
former prostitutes and the damage that it's doing to them, and it's doing
not
to
that I'm
family.
Not that I'm for
Doing to their
legalized
kids.
prostitution, but you again, like with marijuana, seem to be I don't know. I don't want to say confused, but confused in that. Like,
I don't
so
want to
what's
say
the harm?
stupid,
Like,
but you're stupid.
you say, well, pimps are pressing underage girls into prostitution. That's a harm, or they're enslaving women to be their prostitutes to work for them.
A friend of mine
that's slavery.
A 62-year-old prostitute escaped prostitution. She had been a prostitute since she was 13 years old. 13 to 62. Now you could say, well, 62 years old. Certainly, she, it's her body, her choice. That's what I hear you guys say. I can tell you
that's not what I'm saying. That's not what.
Where's prostitution?
You're looking at people forced into prostitution who work against their will. I believe that's called slavery. And I would say libertarians in general are against slavery.
I agree with you, but what you're not understanding is there is for adult prostitution. Okay, let me phrase it the way you're going.
All right, guys.
There is a belief that in prostitution, there's about 30% of adult prostitutes that are basically soliciting their bodies by their choice. That's what you're talking about, I assume, right? The problem is that the people that are in the business, the nonprofit business of helping these women involved, is they say that if you trauma inform, that's kind of a modern popular term, trauma inform, and you understand where these consenting adult prostitutions come from and their backstories and that, they're still being abused. It's just, can you find a prostitute that truly says, you know what, I'm empowered by doing this, I've had a normal adult life, and I'm just going to do this to make some money? You can probably find it, but it is very, very rare.
Believe it or not, I've never met a prostitute, so I couldn't tell you.
I have.
So
I've met multiple prostitutes, former prostitutes.
But that wasn't the.
He specified.
No, I'm not embarrassed to say that.
I mean, you shouldn't be. It's just funny how you said it.
But you guys know that I work in libertarian legislation all the time for anti-human trafficking. You know that.
Yeah, and
I understand that.
I've been around
that. But once again, Tim,
the harm is the human slavery aspect to it. You can do it with prostitution. You can do it with farming. You can do it with manufacture work. Doesn't matter. It's slavery.
Actually, it does matter.
No.
Someone into labor is a terrible, terrible thing. But you need to watch a Netflix show called I Am Jane Doe, and it's 3 different stories of girls that got dragged into prostitution, and the damage goes so far, it's so pervasive, not only in them and their family, but the communities, everything. The damage is incredible. There is a difference between an abused woman sexually, and I'm not making light of someone being forced into labor, but there's a huge difference between forced into labor and forced into sex. Big difference. Because you are destroying the soul of that person. Sex is not just some mechanical act.
Okay, so let's back away from this one for a second, because you and I could have a major outing on the whole idea of forced labor if we're talking about slavery, because I would argue that slavery was all of the above.
I'm talking about modern day.
Well, okay, all right. So modern day slavery, but let's.
Soder was making the distinction between forced labor and forced sex today in the industries and saying there's no difference. Now, I think both are terrible.
The problem that I have, Tim, is that if you have not come to grasp with this yet, we've had these discussions time and time again, right? Anytime the government outlaws something, it creates a vacuum, right? Anytime. No. This
whole idea that you make everything legal and then it's going to be okay is just crap.
No, you're not letting me finish my conversation. Finish my point. So the government has created this issue, this mess that we're seeing down in Mexico right now with the cartels. The government created the cartels, right? The cartels are nothing short of the mafias from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, right? Al Capone was the precursor for El Chapo, right? The government created both of those guys, right? And what the government has now done is the government's created the sex trafficking industry. Now, when it comes to kids, I have children. You know, as far as I'm concerned, anyone who touches a child should be shot in the face, and that should be done, right? There shouldn't be any rehab or any of that stuff. As far as I'm concerned, if you molest a child, the death penalty should be on the table, okay? But I'm talking about 2 consenting adults here making a decision to do something, whether it be a financial reward between two consenting adults, whatever. That's between them and their God. Do I agree with it? No, I don't agree with it. Do I think it's right? No, I don't think it's right. But let me ask you this, Tim. Have you ever been to the state of Nevada?
No.
You've never been to Vegas?
Nope.
Well, I tell you what, that's the first problem. We got to work on that.
You know
Soder?
It's not the first problem.
Soder, we gotta do a show from Vegas.
You know, one of the girls that I've talked to that's escaped prostitution, she was shipped to Vegas on a regular basis. Lives here in she's a Minnesota girl, and she was shipped regularly to Las Vegas to make money for the boys.
Well, and like I said, that absolutely 100%, as far as I'm concerned, is an awful, terrible, terrible thing. Because as I have said before, anytime you're doing violates the rights or human rights of someone else, that is a problem, and then the government should get involved with that. So I've been consistent
involved in making prostitution illegal. This woman was 30 years old.
And you know what? And I don't know this woman, and I will be sure to say a prayer for her tonight,
actually
because that is
2 years ago. It was amazing when she came and spoke to the church ladies in this town about some of her experiences. You were in marijuana. We can have a lot of fun talking about, but you guys totally fall off the table with me when you start talking about legalizing prostitution.
We fell off the bandwagon when we started talking about legalizing plants. So, I mean, I didn't realize how much you hated horticulture, but I suppose. But that wasn't the conversation for the day, right? No. The conversation for today.
Hey, before we get too far, we do have a couple super chats. First up, Andrew wore snowboard with $2. Thank you, buddy. Jim wants on. I would love for Jim to be on sometime. That'd be fantastic.
Jim,
also known as Mr. Mediker.
Oh,
he does videos about making sausage and and getting bugs.
Yeah.
Up next we have Julian Sobishk. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name. Sorry. I just want to say I love Boomer Hour with your local rep. Thanks so much, Tim, for having these conversations. Please keep educating him on liberty and keep this show going. Thank you, Julian. All right. Okay. Now that we're out of that, let's press on, because we only have 42 more minutes.
Sure. Yep, before the Boomers got to go to bed.
Turn into a pumpkin at 10.
Well, golly, you're 3/4
when
of the way there. When did it be pumpkin
already. Pie this time of year?
This is true. Pumpkin spice lattes.
As a straw man, that's amazing. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so let's back up to the original topic. So there's been a lot of conversation here recently about data privacy, data security, and Rakeda and myself recorded a show, not a show, but just about a 30-minute video last week.
No, we didn't.
Well, we thought we did anyway. In Rakeda's studio, I might add. And it was great. It was fantastic. And it was in reference to that what was it, Virginia, right, Soder? That the man that there was a man that committed an armed robbery, robbed a bank. And so the local police department hacked into all of the cell phones of all of the people who were in the building during the time of the robbery, and were able to find the robber as a result. And we were talking about, well, let me ask you this, Tim. I mean, before we go any further than that, what do you think about that story? Upon first hearing about that story, where the police hack into individuals' phones in order to find a robber, how do you feel about that?
2 quick points. Number one, I'm against it. And number
You're against what?
I'm against them hacking into the phones.
Why?
because there was not no. Let me say the second thing, because that's important.
Why do they need to hack into the phones when the phone companies haven't? And
number one, they should not have the ability
hey,
to hack into people's phones without one of two things: either their permission or due process of search and seizure.
But it was for the greater good.
The second point that I need to make is these are lots of issues that we have to face as technology continues to like provide opportunity like this. So in Minnesota a couple of years ago, there's a thing called well, they take pictures of license plates. Okay, police have this ability to go along and take pictures of license plates.
Oh, I know they do.
Yeah, and so we had to make law basically what they could or what they couldn't do. And the problem is the police have, they say, well, we can find out a bad guy by searching. We see something happening, we take a picture of his license plate, and we can find out they're doing where they live and stuff like that. But the problem is the way they do it is they take pictures of everyone's license plates. And if you look at the pictures, it isn't like cropped down to their license plate. It takes a picture of the back of the car. So what happens when you have someone sitting in a car next to you that you don't want anyone to know is sitting next to you in the car, shall we say? Where's your privacy on that? So it was a real difficulty. Not chest cams, what are they called? The
body cam.
What? Body cams, thank you. The body cams, we had a big discussion on that because it's a valuable tool for police. And actually, it's even a valuable tool for the person who is a suspect, because then there's recordings and stuff like that. It really bleeds over a lot of things. So first of all, like I said, I'm fundamentally against anything that steps outside either permission or legitimate due process of search and seizure. And but these things are happening and they're cropping up in all sorts of places. And a little brief story that you just explained to me, that they tapped into people's phones who were there to find this guy. Well, you're glad that they found the guy, but that fundamentally go against search and seizure rights, in my opinion. So it shouldn't have been done.
Except the data was with the phone company, and the police went to the phone company.
That's one of the questions they ask: who owns the data, right? When you sign your cell phone agreement, what do you agree to? Read the small print. I don't know what they say, but there may be a valid argument there. You may have signed away
like
that
when I get my license, my data can be sold to any financial institution or insurance company.
Not in Minnesota, it can't.
Yes, it can.
No, the statutes.
When you get your driver's license?
Yeah, when you get Minnesota statute references federal code that says that any state can sell information to places like Experian, insurance companies, banks.
That statute that you showed me the other day actually refers to the Real ID law, and that's sharing with other states, which I don't agree with, by the way, but that was not selling it. You'd have to show me where it says they can sell it. They can sell it.
I'm pulling it up. Got a big notebook.
Unless there might be something where you have given a release on that. You can't.
So what this is in reference to, guys, is we had a discussion between the three of us in reference to the California DMV going out and selling. They made $50 million last year selling personal information of its citizens to private companies, which I mean, obviously you guys know where I stand on these types of violations, but it's egregious. And so in the conversation, Tim was saying, well, that's something that they've kind of fought against in the state of Minnesota, protecting citizens' data. And I know that you guys have done a great job of protecting a lot of those things. So, and I know I give you a lot of crap, Tim. I think you do a lot more good than bad. I mean, by far.
I'm perfect.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to give you a compliment. Don't make me take it back. So I wouldn't say perfect, but I would say that you do a lot of good. You're one of the better ones in St. Paul. But with all that being said, um, we talked about with the phone companies doing these things and Google giving our information out and selling our information, selling our data, Facebook selling our data, and all these other companies collecting data. I mean, that's the new currency today, right? I mean, data is extremely, extremely valuable, especially as it pertains to being able to market later on down the road. The concern that I'm running into, though, is when private companies do this, we can determine who we work with, right? We talked about that the other day, Soder. We can determine who we decide to work with. We can all rise up and we could say, you know what, we're no longer going to do business with Android because they're sharing our information, and iOS might come out and say, Apple might come out and say, you know what, we're no longer sharing any information. If they have this stuff, I mean, so down to the T. I believe, was it you, Soder, that was telling me that they can see, I mean, in theory, whether you're standing up, whether you're sitting down, what position you're in. I mean,
I believe that was Nick, but yeah.
Okay. But it was a conference that you guys were at together, correct?
Well, we went to a privacy meetup in cities shortly after Trump was elected. That's another story for another time. But they went into some ideas on how to protect yourself, how to hide your communications. There's things you can do, but like hiding your position from cell towers, which is where a lot of the granular data comes from, is very hard to do because you need those cell towers. So, yeah, just turn off location on your phone. Helps a lot.
Sure. But that was something that we were discussing is that, okay, that sounds fantastic that you can, hold these private companies accountable by refusing to do business with them, because at the end of the day, you are the customer and you have the ultimate, I guess, carrot in hand. The problem that we run into, though, is if it's the government, what is the recourse then, Tim? I mean, if the government is taking our information and selling that information to the highest bidder, I mean, what is our recourse as private citizens to ensure that that doesn't happen?
Well, get your legislators to change the law. I'm looking at what Soder sent me in statute, and I'm not seeing where he's talking about that it can be sold to the highest bidder. He's looking at statute relating to the Real ID law, and that's the area where I have a fundamental problem, because we do have Real ID in Minnesota now, and that's why I voted against it, is that this information can be shared with other state governments, okay? But this idea that it can be sold to the highest bidder, that's just simply not there. Not in Minnesota, it's not. Now, there's the question, could it happen? Okay. There is some feelings that there are some roundabout ways, maybe that's what your article is about, that it could happen. And that's a concern. And that's why we fought against this. Okay. But I'm telling you, the way that the law is being interpreted today, so let's say we find out tomorrow that the state of Minnesota sold the information to someone, we'd have to either, depending on the circumstances, take it to court, or it would come to the legislature and we'd clarify and probably tighten up the law. But the intent of the legislature, which carries the highest order in any law in Minnesota. So let's say we pass a law and then the agency does something screwy and we say, no, our intent was to do that over there. They have to follow that. Okay. That's the rule. And the intent of the legislature, even on the Real ID that was passed, was that it was not going to be shared with anybody. All right, but the way the federal law is written,
for those that aren't
set up to where there's a central data, there's a way in which other states can get that information. Now, could you argue that, like, let's say Wisconsin gets that information and in their law they can sell information? Possibility. I couldn't tell you. I don't know what Wisconsin law is, but I can tell you in Minnesota, Real ID, The only thing that can be even potentially shared, and even this is a gray area argument for some people, is with another state government.
So Tim, real quick, so to help out with for those who are not aware of what Real ID is, kind of give us a quick
a real quick primer. Okay,
yeah.
So in 2005, I believe it was 2005, 2006, the federal government, in the dark of night, on a totally unrelated appropriations bill, passed the Real ID law. It was kind of a broader part of the Patriot Act, which I agree with. I didn't like the Patriot Act when it was being formed, believe it or not. I know you guys think that I'm just like Mr. Let's do that sort of stuff, but I'm not. I was against it. But in 2005, 2006, they passed the Real ID law, which basically says there's a standardized form, not literal, it has to be 80% standardized to the criteria of the federal government, but there's a standardized form in which your driver's license or state ID has to be, and it requires certain information, and it's accessible by the federal government. So, because before that, your state driver's license was literally in the DMV and nothing else. Okay, it just went there, and that's where it was kept. Now there's two things. Number one, there's more private data that gets put into the Real ID driver's license, and number two, the federal right now the only thing that the federal government can use it for is federal institutions. So military bases is the best example. There are some other examples, but just for the sake of brevity, that's the one place. The other thing that you can't do is you can't fly. You can't fly interstate, and they're saying that it's Commerce Clause sort of stuff. Since you're crossing states, you can't do that. However, the chief, or whatever his position is called, of Homeland Security in the same law can designate other things without legislative action. He can designate other things that this information can be required for your Real ID. So one of the arguments is he may say, if you want to buy ammunition, you're going to have to use your Real ID, which in effect means the federal government knows that you bought ammunition. Okay, that's not the case now, but it could be the case. That's where the problem is. Now, the other side of it is they have this private information. What do they do with it? We had a lot of discussions about this, and we're being told the way we wrote it in Minnesota is, and I don't like this either, I'm not defending this, but I'm saying the only entity that can have that information the way we interpret the law would be another state's government. And that's even up for argument as to whether that's true, but that's the one area that you guys are talking about. But as far as it being sold to the highest bidder, there are scenarios that you could spell out that that's possible. We're pretty confident that with the legislative attempt that is not the case in Minnesota.
So, as I read the article, it would look as though the information can be sold legally to financial institutions, to in investment the institutions. What were some of the others, Soder?
Insurance agencies, financial institutions, private investigative companies.
Here's an important thing, though. I'm looking at this you talking about the Cornell article?
You mean of 18 U.S. Code?
What? No, the Cornell article where they're talking about this possibility.
We're not talking about the possibility. It's literally the U.S. Code.
Because here it says, if everyone reading this gave $15 right now, our fundraiser would be done within an hour. Okay? So one of the ways that you raise money is to get people worked up over things. Now, it might be true, okay?
No, this is literally the U.S. Code. This is like this is a site referencing U.S. Code, like the Minnesota State Revisor website.
Yeah, and I'm telling you that to understand how the law works, is it possible? Yes. Is it probable from what we were told? Because we spent a lot of time. Understand Minnesota was the last state to get Real ID. Out of 50 states, we were number 50. Okay? We spent a lot of time talking about this, issues like you're talking about right now. And we had, from the people, understand, we have people that are watchmen on the wall on data privacy who didn't like the Real ID and they voted no against it. but they discussed this stuff, and they found that at best there's a possibility. There is a possibility. By the way, the federal government could change the laws on Real ID, and then it's even a probability. I can just tell you that today, the possibility of them selling this information to the highest bidder is just not there in the law. It's just not.
Well,
it's not. I know you guys always want to find out that there's this conspiratorial design by the federal and state governments to take everything away from you. And that's right in a lot of cases, but in this case, it's just not.
No offense, Tim, but you lost a little bit of credibility with me when you told me that that there was no one put in jail for possession of marijuana.
Okay, then there's no point in me talking with you guys. If I am telling you the way the state of Minnesota is doing something, you're like, well, that's a bunch of bullshit because you told me that there's no way someone could be put in jail for possessing marijuana.
I'm simply asking you to explain this article. Explain it. That's all I'm asking.
What I just I brought up the link that Soder gave me, and it says, "Dear readers, today we ask you to help Legal Information Institution. We depend on donor support for your survival." That's all I got. So when you talk about an article, I don't even know what article you're talking about.
I think he's talking about the California one he shared a few days ago, not the reference to U.S. Code 18, Section 2721. By the way,
California selling to the highest bidder? Yeah, I probably believe that.
Yeah.
So let's see. Where's that at?
You might need to resend it, Soder. I just tried to open it up and it said the exact same thing. So,
well, you can probably.
So what did the article say? The article said that California is selling people's data. Is that what it said?
Well, I mean, that was national news. No, the article was speaking of Minnesota in particular, stating that Minnesota, that it was lawful and legal for Minnesota to sell private information gathered by the DMV to the lists we just gave you, to financial institutions, to investment companies, to the other banks, to private investigative firms. I mean, there was a whole list of different companies that were lawfully able to buy this information from the Minnesota DMV.
This is in the Yahoo News article.
Well, that's the bulk of the reason why we're having this conversation.
I know, but all I'm seeing, the article only talks about California here. Where do you bring up Minnesota?
That's Mr. Producer.
Minnesota's statutes reference U.S. Code 1827.
Oh, so you're extrapolating across.
No, I'm not. Minnesota state statute is.
No, Minnesota but that's okay. I'm not attacking you. I'm trying to clarify here.
Okay.
You're saying that because this article references the same federal statutes, therefore it's up for sale. That's what you're saying, right?
No, Minnesota state statutes reference U.S. code saying.
I know that's the point.
All these things apply.
It references the same code that California is using to sell this stuff. Is that what I'm trying to clarify?
Yes,
here.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. Sorry, that is what I'm saying.
So there has not been an article that says Minnesota is selling your wares.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, and not that I'm aware of either, because we discussed this. Okay, I don't know where else in Minnesota statute on data privacy this is. I can tell you that the one thing, even though they voted no, the one thing that they were satisfied with, my data privacy hawks in the Minnesota legislature is they were confident the way the law is written now that they could not sell it. Now, is there a possibility down the road? Yes, they're very nervous about that. One of the problems with this law that was written, the federal statute that you cite, this thing that was passed in the dark of night, is it looks like really sloppy legislation, and there's legitimate concerns about it. So could Minnesota do that? Yes. You need to hear, though, how things work in law, okay? Just because something could happen doesn't mean it can happen. Okay.
Okay.
So you're saying just because someone might smoke marijuana and get in an accident doesn't mean that it will happen. Okay.
What I'm saying is in you guys do understand the three branches of government, right? Okay, there are laws that are written, and then something happens, and someone says,
I absolutely
I don't like what happened here. And so a judge determines what the law did say or didn't say. And then if it did say something and someone then says, well, that's unconstitutional, then it's put to the test for its constitutionality. Okay. The law is not, I mean, there are some laws that you would say are probably pretty cut and dry. I can't think of one off the top, something, but laws are put to the test of whether it be constitutionality or against other laws or whatever it is all the time. That's what the judicial branch is for. Okay. So going back to this, what they did in California, could that happen in Minnesota? I can't say 100% no. I can tell you that the intent of the legislature, the way we wrote our Real ID law, is that it will not happen. So if it ever does happen, we find out the state of Minnesota. So let me give an example on another issue. Minnesota is not supposed to be in the dealing of aborted baby parts. Guess what? We find out that they were. And they said, well, we think we're following the law. And that's being put to the challenge right now. Okay. So could it ever happen? I can't tell you definitively that it would never happen. The intent of the legislature was that it will not happen in the state of Minnesota. So if at such time it happens, then we put it to the test in the courts. Now, I don't think it's going to happen because we made a big deal out of it, but could it happen? I can't say 100% definitive that it won't. But using Minnesota statute extrapolated across to California, what happened there with one federal statute is just way too simplistic for the way the law works and legislative process works and the courts work. It's just not that cut and dry.
Yeah. So
if you want to be upset that Minnesota is going to sell your wares, then one of the things that you said, what can you do? Call your legislator. So I can find out and say, let me double check and make sure that we can't sell your information. Now, if someone in research says, well, you can sell it because of this, then it's a problem and we tighten up the legislation. That's what we do.
Okay.
You guys are really worried about something that I think you're just getting yourself worked up in Minnesota because you want to be worked up.
No, it's not about that. It's
there
actually
are some things we do right in Minnesota. There are some. Maybe it's only 1 out of 1,000, but there are some things we do right here.
I'm sure there are.
To the millennials, we do nothing right because we just gave you big student debt and made you pay for Social Security for old people that you'd rather be dead. Or prostituted. Or smoking weed.
Okay. All right. So, but what we're talking about specifically is this idea that your information is not your own, and the privacy that doesn't exist anymore. We've had plenty of conversations about this privately, having this conversation in the chat and having this conversation on a stream, was something that we wanted to talk to you, because when we brought this up, your immediate reaction was, hey, Minnesota is one of the
toughest data privacy states in the US.
So expound on that. I mean, so what does that mean? So what extra measures has Minnesota put in place in order to ensure that we don't put our information out there willy-nilly for the entire world?
Well, I understand your question, but I'm going to have to steer it a little bit. Let me give some examples. So HIPAA, everyone knows what HIPAA is, at least has a fundamental understanding of it, right? There's actually different degrees of HIPAA in all the states. Some of it is tighter than other. Minnesota is known to be the tightest HIPAA information state in the US. Basically, your information goes nowhere, to a fault, I think, but it goes nowhere without your permission. When I say to a fault, like my parents both had problems in their later years with over medication. And it's because doctors literally have no way of knowing the medications that you're getting from other doctors. Okay. So that would be an example of tight and stringent one. Real ID. We were the last ones to have real, that we do have it now. Okay. But the way that we have Real ID set up, and this is going to be put to the test, because now remember, I don't like Real ID period, because I think it opens the door to some data privacy issues, and you're pointing to them. There are some potential problems. But in Minnesota, we took the 2-tier or the two lane route. You don't have to get real ID in Minnesota. You can get a regular driver's license still. That's what I have. I don't have a real ID. I have my passport and I have a regular driver's license. Now, with my regular driver's license, I can't get on an airplane. I have to have my passport. Okay. But that information, you have an avenue by which you can keep that driver's license data private through that lane. Okay. So that would be an example of another thing that Minnesota does. On body cams for cops, this is real tricky because you'd be surprised where data privacy kind of meanders a little bit. But Minnesota, what we finally got signed into law on the police use of body cams is one of the toughest when it comes to data privacy, personal. I would say it's data privacy, but it's video of you in your personal belongings. We are among the toughest in the U.S. on what you can and can't use that for. Those driver's license plates that I told you, or the pictures of driver's license, or pardon me, the pictures of license plates that I told you, in Minnesota, I think they're allowed to be kept on record for 30 days, 30 or 60. We started arguing back and forth on that forever, but they get expunged after, let's say 60, just to say err on the side of discretion. But after 60 days, that picture of your driver's license gets expunged. That's the sort of things that we do to where we try to keep your personal information as private as possible. Those are just a handful of the bigger examples, but it goes deep into any information that you have in the state is kept. We don't even share information across agencies. You have to affirmatively approve your data be shared. Some states you have to affirmatively disprove, meaning you can't use this. I have to sign that you cannot use this. In Minnesota, you have to sign that you can use it.
See, that kind of sounds like that guy robbing a bank being found. If I go anywhere, if I drive anywhere, cops are I know they're taking pictures of my license plate. Right. And if I happen to be in the same area, who are they going to, and let's just say I go to the cities, there's a big old hullabaloo. My license gets flagged because there's probably thousands of cameras in MSP. Well, what's this guy from middle of nowhere, Minnesota doing? We know the perp was white. Was he involved? He never goes there. Now I'm a person of interest.
Yep.
Just like this guy was, because he's never in the area, but the government got the data on where his cell phone was.
And that's a legitimate concern. That's the thing that we talk about, that they shouldn't be able to use that information.
So why do they have it? What's the point?
Why do they have the picture of your license plate?
Yes. Why do they need it if they're not supposed to use it to make my life difficult?
Well, because I'm speaking on behalf of why the law enforcement wants it. Okay. It improves their ability to catch bad guys. Okay. No, I'm telling you what their answer is. Okay.
I know what their answer is.
The argument that we have. I can tell you that law enforcement didn't want to expunge those license plates ever. No, I know it's 60 days seem really random to me. I think it was one of those classic compromises, because I was like, okay, we have one side once kept forever. The other one wants it kept 0 days. So the argument ended up being is where were the least people arguing, and it ended up at 30 or 60 days. It was totally just a number, in my opinion, other than the fact that it's better that they only keep it 30 days as opposed to 10 years. I could argue that.
So you're telling me my life can be severely impacted because I happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, because a bunch of legislators wanted to compromise on where the least amount of argument was and how long my license plate is in the police database.
But Soder, what do you have to hide, man? Don't worry about it. What do you have to hide?
I'm just not going to tell anyone about it.
No, you don't have anything to hide, then don't worry about it.
And Soder, I agree with you. Soder, I agree with you. I'm just telling you what the argument is on
But
the
Tim,
other side.
I thought you typical government types were always like, hey, as long as you have nothing to hide, you don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah, so you guys make huge generalizations about me, and we mostly have fun with it, so I can live with it.
It's where the most
But
fun happens.
it doesn't mean that 90% of what you guys claim I think is just totally inaccurate. You're either not listening.
Well, then dispute it. Then
what's that?
If it's not true,
I voted against
it.
I can't dispute it. I voted against Real ID. I voted against where I had the votes don't come to you every single vote, but I held the line on like the license plates and held the line on the body cams.
I guess I just have a hard time understanding how you can fight against my license plate being used or being a picture of my license plate being kept, but you are for the idea of an officer asking me for my phone and having the right without a warrant to search my phone to see
I'm
if
not for
I
that.
have been on.
I'm not for that.
But you voted for it.
Oh, this is a funny thing. What I really want you guys to do is just sit with me all of one session, and it might open your eyes. But more important, get elected to office.
You let me know when I'm invited to show up, and I'll be there.
Then you find out that things are not binary. We had this discussion offline on the back channel last week. Okay, I've exhausted myself on explaining why I vote for a bill, but I totally agree with what you just said. Is that an officer should not have the right to be able to just take your phone and search it. I agree with you 100%. And by the way, most people say that law does not give them the right to do that. We just think it could. But right now, the way the law is written, most people believe that they cannot just take your phone.
Well, so it does or it doesn't?
That they can just take your phone?
Yeah.
Okay, legislative intent. This is really important on stuff like this. It may not sound like it, but it is. Legislative intent is that they cannot take your phone. Now, what happens when a police officer takes someone's phone? Someone says, you can't take my phone. And law enforcement says, based on the law, we think that we can. Here's where the law says that we can. And the person
then
says,
you draw your gun
here's in the
and you
law
get
where it
shot.
says you can't. And then you go to court. Or you go and do a legislative tightening of the belt, which is what happens also. That's what I'm trying to say is you guys think that laws are static. It's like the laws of Medes and Persians, that whatever it is, it is. That's not true. Law is constantly being reconsidered and argued, whether it's in the court of law or in the legislature. That's what keeps us going back every year. It gives us something to do, right? But as far as just because I vote for a bill, which I tried to explain, and I used it as an example, and you guys just ran with it in some weird direction. Just because I voted for a bill that was signed into law doesn't mean that I support police taking your cell phone and doing whatever they want to do with it. That's too simplistic. That's just silly.
Just because I voted for it doesn't mean that I support it. Is that what you're saying?
Have you guys even looked at the law, the hands-free law?
Oh yeah, we looked at the law.
Okay, where in it does it say that the police can take your phone?
It didn't say the police can take your phone. It didn't say it could take your phone. It said the police had the right to look at your phone if they suspected that you were using your phone prior to an accident or prior to being pulled over.
Yeah, it might say that. Does it say that? I don't have it in front of me.
Yes, it does. It says that if I get pulled over and I throw my phone on the floorboard or whatever, the police have the right to look at it. The other thing is,
here's the argument. What happens when they come up and you just stuck it in your pocket? What happens?
They have the right to ask for it if they thought that they saw a phone.
Right, but do you have to give it to them?
Well, I mean, are you asking me? Like, because
that sounds like
because this was what was discussed on the House.
Shot.
This is what was discussed on the House floor. If they say give me your phone and you say no, what happens? We were assured legislative intent. Now understand, this may turn out to be something else happens down the road, but legislative intent is they do not have to give you the phone. Then you say, well, why is there even a law if they can't look at your phone?
So you're telling me I can reject a lawful request of a police officer during a traffic stop.
We believe, there's kind of other search and seizure things that I'm not the expert on. You're laughing. It isn't necessarily lawful.
I am laughing.
There is an argument. Isn't there an argument about something, and if it's in plain sight, the police have a right to look at it, right? I think that there's something like that.
Plain sight in my pocket.
If they see open liquor in the car, they can say, "Hey, I want to look at your car." It kind of is an open door into looking in the car. Something like that. I'm not the attorney on this stuff. I don't know what that is. But I'm telling you, let's say I take my phone, okay? And as they're walking up to the car, I stick it in my pocket. And they say, "We think that you were looking at your cell phone. May we see it?" I believe that the way the law is written, because we talked about this, you don't have to give it to them. You don't. Now, there are people that argued that, oh, yes, you will have to give it to them. Or it was argued, if these police are in North Minneapolis and they ask, take your phone out of your pocket, buddy, and you don't do it, what happens to you? Those are legitimate questions and concerns. But the legislative intent of the law is that, no, you don't have to give it to them.
Yeah.
So don't say lawfully give it to them. There is no law that says you have to empty your pockets for a cop.
No, I'm
unless they
referencing the request.
What's that?
Like, I'm referencing the request itself. They can request a lot of things.
They can request a lot of things, but you have to. A lot of people voluntarily give things to the police that they don't have to. When they say, "Do you know how fast you're going?" You don't have to say yes.
Yeah, and you
might incriminate yourself. Granted,
they are not required to tell me the truth either. So.
I know you guys. I'm telling you, you guys are just trying really hard to find a way that Minnesota is stealing your data. You should be more worried about my Google email account, or the fact that we're on YouTube Live, or that we communicate through Instant Messenger or Facebook. We're giving all of our information up through that stuff.
But see, and I'm glad you brought that up, Tim, because I absolutely 100% agree. The difference is that we understand that private markets can help us with that situation. We understand that through using VPNs, through just not doing business with Google if we choose not to, using DuckDuckGo instead of Google, using other platforms. We understand that if as people begin to be more cognizant of their private data being put out there, that other platforms will come about and can come about and may come about, right? Yep. And so we understand that from a privacy standpoint for the private citizen and from private entities, we understand that is something that we can shop around, and we can find the companies that hold our privacy most important and most dearly, right? I think the new Apple campaign right now is talking about how, on your phone, you have more private information in your phone than what you do in your home, and your heartbeat and your heart rate after a run and all in your credit card numbers and all these different types of things are all on your phone, and these things belong to you. And so they are making a very, very strong argument for privacy and data privacy, right? Which is smart, because it's at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. I read an article today about the issues with smart TVs and how that information is being sent out. We know some of the information that's been sent out over Siri and over Alexa and these different programs. So we can decide as private citizens if we choose to do business with these companies or not. The concern for me is when the government starts to share that information, what recourse do we have? Do we leave the U.S.? I say that tongue in cheek.
And I'm not disagreeing with you that there should be concern that government tries to do that, because I agree with you. You guys think that I reject this. I agree that government, especially federal government, but all government, always tries to expand its authority and impose on our freedoms. I don't disagree with any of that. And should it be a concern for everyone? Absolutely. Okay. The only thing that I'm saying that I'm hoping provides at least a little bit of confidence in the people is that in the state of Minnesota, we are pretty rigid on this stuff. Now, I will tell you that people that are listening to this, it says, I don't care. I think the government in Minnesota is a bunch of dirty dogs and we need to get rid of them too. Then that's what we're talking about, okay? If we have gotten to the point to where government, no matter what, is going to fail and is going to abuse us and use things against our own will, then it's time to stand up and act, okay? I don't agree with it, but I'm telling you that then it's time to act. If you believe that is the case, if we have come to that point in time, but I can also tell you that if you have gotten to that point in time, there's nothing that I can do to tell you to do otherwise. So I don't know what you want me to do. I'm telling you that the data privacy in Minnesota, as the government uses data, is about as stringent as you're going to find anywhere. Are there gaps? Probably. But the attitude in the legislature, and it's nonpartisan, both sides, we have a majority of this, that if private data is being misused, we are going to make sure that we cut that at the curb, okay? We're going to do that. That has been the direction and perspective of the state of Minnesota government, that we're going to keep your private data private, okay? So as we legislate, when we find out some area where maybe your data is not being used the way it should be, then we try to tighten that up, or we do tighten it up. Okay?
And Tim, we truly do thank you for that, and that's why we continue to vote you in. So it's fun to give you crap, and I say this every time you come on. We appreciate you. We disagree. We genuinely disagree on certain things, but I think I know that we agree on far more than what we don't. And the fact that you see that there's a problem with it lets me know that we got the right guy in there. But I'm going to always be honest with you about the things that I disagree with you on. And I think that's only fair. And I don't think you're going to stop telling me the things that I agree with, that I like, that I pull for, that you disagree on. So
That's right.
We're going to both speak our mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, but I know you've been up really late and had a lot going on today, and well, it's been a long weekend. Soder, I think we have a couple of
we do have a super chat. This is from a little while ago. Tim, or this is from Osmodius, $5. Thank you, buddy. Tim, based on the logic you have presented on this show, I wager you would be among the first people to support filed legislation to repeal the second. I would have to disagree with Osmodius on that. I do not believe Tim would be one of the first.
Based on what I'm saying, I started this show and continually say that I agree 100% on protecting your data and protecting. Okay, I can't win, and it's fine. I don't have to win. But if what I've said today thinks that I'm there to repeal the Second Amendment, then they are.
Wait a minute. I will vehemently deny. I would be shocked if Tim ever voted to repeal the Second Amendment. I think that he has shown himself to be a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm laughing at Soder saying I would have to disagree. He would not be the first.
I know. So just so you know,
he might be second or third, but he won't be the first.
Just so people are aware that all the gun rights groups, whether it be GOCRA or NRA or Gun Owners Caucus, those are the ones that are really the predominant ones. I score an A+ on my rating when it comes to Second Amendment rights consistently, and I've been a co-author to strengthen our rights of the Second Amendment. So,
you know what, Soder, I think that the Out of the Darkness channel should formulate a coalition, and we should have a boomer rating. We should rate all the legislators on their boomer tendencies.
That'd be great.
That is a fantastic idea.
Except for who are you gonna add on there that's not boomer, socialist, or communist? You got nobody.
Don't give it away.
There's two people in my caucus that you got a willing shot at. Okay, two people, and even them, you'd probably be disappointed at some point. You'd be disappointed in them. We're all boomers.
Libertarians are always disappointed at everyone. That's the problem.
That's what I'm saying. Just be disappointed in everyone. You can't go wrong. But I don't think there's an elected person. The one that's the closest, and I've said his name before, is Representative Cal Barr. He's probably the purest libertarian out of everyone in the legislature. You might give him a non-boomer. Ironically, he literally is a boomer. He's older than I am. But he's about the purest libertarian. He's about the purest libertarian, and then we've got two other people that I would call pretty strong libertarians, but they might even disappoint you in a few areas.
I think we had one on the show over the summer, Jeremy Munson.
No, Jeremy would disappoint you. He doesn't go the place that you go with some of this stuff. He agrees with the premises of what you say, but anytime we try to give you the what's really happening, you guys get all worked up and say, well, then damn it, don't let that happen. Or like, we're just telling you what's happening.
Well, I think we have to agree in principle first.
I'm a boomer and I embrace it. The more I learn about the libertarian perspective, I become more boomer every day and thankful for it.
Well,
I think we really need to do this boomer index. Oh, I'm loving this idea.
I do like the boomer index or the boomer alerts. You need to have a graphic that goes flashing up.
Well, Tim is always quick to talk about how I score pretty high with this group. I score pretty high with this group.
I'm just trying to use it as a contextual thing. That's all.
Oh, then that's fine. That's fine. So
I will tell you the most boomer conservative organization that there is out there, the Center for American Excellence. That's a Minnesota. They're a great resource of information. I'm actually going to be oh shoot, I got to deal with that on Monday. I'm actually writing an article for them. They love me, but they are definitely boomer conservatives. Huh. So yes, I'm a boomer conservative. I love it.
Well, and we'll still love you regardless.
You guys think that it's a criticism?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Among the 0.5% of people in the population that agree that prostitution should be legal.
You said what?
I believe I said earlier I do not believe prostitution should be legal.
Boomer.
No, you said I don't know if I believe that it should be legal. You didn't say definitively that you didn't believe that it should be legal.
It should not be legal. That's right, Steve.
Oh, he's parsing my words.
Well, no, it's just
you exactly millennials.
Yeah,
always going to the words.
And you're supposed to be one of my best friends, and I thought that you were a bastion for liberty, but clearly you're not. You're all for government control. So
I just don't want government paying for all the bastards.
Okay, we can have that conversation another time, but 75% of the black community would fall into that category right now. So when you have 75% of a group of children being born outside of wedlock, clearly whatever we're doing right now isn't working. So we can use that as an excuse all we want to, but I don't think we could.
All right. Before we go, we got another super chat. Paulo, for $3. Actually, this is from Streamlabs. The blessing of the information age is the power it gives to the people to seek out and analyze data for their benefit. The curse of the information age is the power it gives to governments to do the same. We must be vigilant. And the Spaz Cow for $5. This one is a super chat. Riley v. California and United States via Worry. They ruled that they ruled the cops can't touch your phone without a warrant. Doesn't mean they can't ask. I would believe, but cops can ask for a lot of stuff.
Well, there you go. Go.
I'm gonna go, guys.
No, I don't speak for 75% of the black community. It's Mark Gaffney.
I thought all black people spoke for 75% of the black community.
No, but statistically, it is a statistic. You can check it out, but it is a statistic. Sorry, guys. 75%. No, I have not. That's the sad part. I wish I could say that I have. 75% of black children born today are born into single parent homes. Okay, so I'm not speaking for 75% of the black community, but I am stating the facts. That's a problem, needs to be addressed, and I was simply referring to the argument that Soder was making against consensual sex between two adults. Anyway,
I was not something I was against, sir. I was
well,
against prostitution.
oh, we're parsing words. Well, what's the
Or
difference?
not against. I was,
Wow.
in your
He's
words,
proving
not.
to be more and more a boomer. Now he's parsing his words, boomer.
I'm a millennial parsing a boomer's words of my millennial self.
We will get this boomer index done
boomer,
as quickly as possible. And I think
as quickly as millennials can.
As quickly, well, we can have it done by the end of the night then. But hey, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Tim. I know it's been a long day. What show did you go see, by the way?
We went to go see. I took three of my kids to go see Phantom of the Opera.
I thought that's which one you went to. Cool.
Yeah, it's not a big favorite of mine. I like the music, but they wanted to go see it. My two daughters.
Well, is that because there's prostitution in it? No, wait. Sorry,
Phantom of the Opera.
I was thinking of that other musical. That Les Miserables. I was thinking Les Miserables.
And she dies because of it. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah,
you're welcome. I guess. I'm sorry.
Fantine dies.
All right.
Actually, in Les Mis, everyone dies.
Well, there you go. So,
thanks for depressing me.
Only the good die young, though, Tim. So,
Billy Joel.
Well, does that mean Tim is
a boomer?
Yeah, he's a boomer now. He must not have been good. All right. So, you guys have a great evening. Thank you guys for joining Out of the Darkness. If you are not currently a subscriber, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to press the bell. Is the bell still there? The bell down there for notifications, so you can be notified when we upload new content or we upload information to the community page. So, guys, have a great night. Have a great week. And we will look forward to seeing you guys here next week, same time. Have a great day. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.